In a previous video, I had already discussed with you about the 7 basic physical quantities, the fundamental quantities from which all other quantities can be derived. We talked about length, whose SI unit is meter, about mass, whose SI unit is kilogram, about thermodynamic temperature, whose SI unit is Kelvin. Then came the electric current, which is ampere. There was something called amount of substance measured in mole and luminous intensity measured in candela, and finally time, which is measured in second. So these are the 7 basic fundamental units, and we also have 2 supplementary units which are known as the plane angle and the solid angle. And all other derived quantities about which we hear, whether it's force or pressure, density or any kind of say acceleration, momentum, they can all be derived or written in terms of these quantities. And that is what basically we did in dimensional analysis. But how are these quantities defined? What is the convention? What is 1 kilogram or what is this 1 meter? So if you look into the definitions, 1 meter, how is it defined? In your book it is written that the meter is the length of the path travelled by light in vacuum during a time interval of 1 divided by 299, 792, 458 of a second. So that basically is the speed of light. So the distance that light travels in 1 divided by the speed of light of a second, that is 1 meter. So it is defined in terms of the speed of light. Similarly, if you look into the definition of ampere, well, it is defined as the constant current which, when maintained between 2 parallel straight conductors of infinite length, 1 meter apart in vacuum, it produces a force between these 2 conductors equal to 2 × 10⁻⁷ Newton per meter of length. That was defined in 1948. So if you look at the other definitions as well, like the Kelvin and so on, you will find that almost all the definitions are in terms of some kind of physical quantities which we call constants in our physics, like speed of light, it's constant, and so on. The only exception is the kilogram, 1 kg. This is till now not explained in terms of any kind of physical constants. 1 kg is defined as the mass of this cylinder. There is a cylinder which is kept at Sevres, Paris. The dimensions of this cylinder is that this cylinder has got a diameter and a height both equal to 3.9 centimeter, and this cylinder is made up of platinum iridium alloy. So the mass of this particular cylinder, which is 3.9 centimeter in diameter and 3.9 centimeter in height, kept at a temperature and pressure controlled area in Sevres, Paris in a laboratory, that is 1 kg. And it is based on this 1 kg that all the other masses, the various weights that we see, whether in the grocery shops or anywhere, all of them use this one as the standard. So recently there has been some attempts to even make the definition of the kg based on some physical constant, and there is a very interesting video about this on YouTube. I shall share that video with you. But as of now, this is how the kilogram is defined. So the 7 fundamental quantities, you need to know their names, the symbols and the SI units. Definitions are just for your information, they are not going to be asked anywhere. So why do we use the units? What is the necessity for using the units? Units bring a universality. Like if you say that, say I weigh 70 kg, suppose you say that this is your mass, and if you multiply it with the acceleration, you say that my weight is 700 Newton. Fine, that's your weight. This is your weight when you are here in Kolkata. Now suppose you go to a different city, say you go to Moscow, and if they say, well, we do not consider this particular one as the standard, we do not think that this one has this mass of 1 kg, we have a different standard. It is basically a block of wood which is again a cylinder and its height is 5 centimeter and diameter is 2 centimeter, and that mass is 1 kg. And according to that, we find that your mass is not 700 Newton but 300 Newton. That would create a lot of problems. People travel internationally, they have this baggage capacity. So if there was no such universal or standard against which we could measure this, it would have created a lot of problems. This is why units are necessary. I don't know if I have shared this with you previously. But there was this one particular disaster that happened in NASA. It happened in the year 1999 with their Mars Climate Orbiter. So this Mars Climate Orbiter, it was supposed to make a number of orbital motions around the planet Mars in order to study elements about its surface, its atmosphere, so that it could understand the climate of Mars better. But what happened is that once this Mars Climate Orbiter entered the orbit of Mars, after some time it crashed into the surface of Mars. And why did this happen? Well, generally in missions like this one, what happens is different teams are entrusted with different works. Say one team is working with the propulsion system, another team is working with the robotics and programming, and so on. And finally, in one location, all of this is assembled to be sent for the mission. This mission was an 11-year-long mission. For 11 years, scientists worked behind this mission, and the total estimated cost of this mission was $327 million during 1990s. So that's a lot of money. But you know why did this crash into Mars? The reason is wrong choice of units. While one group of scientists used the SI system, another group of scientists used the FPS system, which is the foot-pound second system. So they made all their entire calibrations and calculations in this system, which obviously did not match with that in the SI system. And as a result of this mission, an 11-year-long mission of such humongous cost, failed. Instead of orbiting the planet, it went inside the planet and crashed. So you see that is why units are so necessary, and having one standard unit throughout the world is even more necessary. Pretty soon we shall be studying about significant figures and errors. But why is it important to know about errors, about the significant digits? Well, that's because it is very important to know about the uncertainties in a measurement whenever we are measuring something. Remember this, any measurement that you make without a knowledge of the uncertainty or the error is completely meaningless. So if you are measuring something but you do not know that how much uncertainty is present in that measurement, your measurement is completely meaningless. And measurement is one of the pillars of physics. It's very important so that you can measure something properly. Since I am talking of measurement, let me give you an example here. I am sure you all have heard about this particular genius gentleman by the name of Albert Einstein. So his life is one which is filled with ups and downs. There are a lot of stories about his life, but let me just cut short to the year 1905, which is also called the miracle year of this person, of this scientist. At that time he was working in a patent office. He was simply a clerk in a patent office. He was not the Einstein that the world knows today. And in that year, this particular year, 1905, he published 4 papers. 4 papers, which are also called the Annus Mirabilis papers. which translates in English as the miracle papers. So what were these 4 papers about? The first paper, it was about photoelectric effect. The second paper was on Brownian motion. The third paper, it was on special theory of relativity, right? The electrodynamics of moving bodies. Special theory of relativity. And the fourth paper was on the mass energy equivalence, which you also know as E equal to mc square. And later in the year 1916, this was 1905, in the year 1916 he came with something known as the general theory of relativity. So in the 1905 year, which is also known as the miracle year of Einstein, he published these 4 papers. Photoelectric effect was the topic of his first paper, followed by Brownian motion, special theory of relativity, and the mass energy equivalence equals mc square. He received the Nobel Prize, but do you know for which of these papers he received the Nobel Prize? It was the first one, and I quote what the Nobel Committee wrote. It wrote that the Nobel Prize is awarded to Albert Einstein for his services to theoretical physics and especially for his discovery of the law of photoelectric effect. And what is the reason behind this? The reason is experiments and measurements. There are a lot of esoteric theories in physics relating to black holes, relating to string theory, meson theory, unification of forces, grand unified theory. But you will find that the Nobel Prizes are not awarded to these theories. It is one of the reasons why Stephen Hawking, despite being one of the finest or the brilliant minds in the area of physics, never received a Nobel Prize, because the areas in which he researched could not be properly demonstrated or experimented. And the Nobel Committee never offers a Nobel Prize to some topic, whether in physics or chemistry or medicine, that has not been validated by experiments. So the 4 papers which Einstein provided at that time, these 3 papers, whatever the papers claimed, the hypothesis as I say, they were not tested by experiments, but photoelectric effect was tested by experiment and was found to be true. And as a result, he was awarded the Nobel Prize for the photoelectric effect. So that's why it's so important that measurements are made properly. Measurement is one of the vital pillars of physics, and that is why we will in the coming lectures talk about significant figures, error analysis, rounding off of digits, how to measure something, what are the shortcomings of the instrument, so that we have an idea how to take proper measurements. Even for this general theory of relativity, he had given a lot of predictions with the general theory of relativity. One of the predictions of general theory of relativity was time dilation. So what was this time dilation? Time dilation means that moving bodies experience time slower than bodies who are at rest. So if I am here standing at rest, and if say one of my friends is moving close to the speed of light, and after 10 years he returns back, I will have aged 10 years because I am at rest, but he will be, say, might have aged only 2 or 3 years because he was traveling so close to speed of light. So moving bodies, they experience time slowly. Another of his general theory of relativity predictions was gravitational lensing. So this gravitational lensing basically said that any kind of gravitational body like the sun, it acts as a lens. What do I mean by that? So suppose you are here on earth, there is a star here and this is the sun, in between the earth and the star. From here you cannot directly see the star, but this particular sun, a body of huge gravity, will act as a lens, and what it will do is, when the light of the star passes like this, the gravity of the sun will bend the ray of light, just like a lens does. So if there were no gravity here, the ray of light from the star would have passed straight, but because of this gravity, it will bend, and you can see the star which is directly behind the sun. This phenomenon, wonderful phenomenon, is called gravitational lensing. He gave another of his predictions from the general theory of relativity, which was the precession of Mercury, and the final one was on gravitational waves. And what was this precession of Mercury? So the precession of Mercury, he basically said that if this is the sun and this is Mercury, if Mercury is moving around sun in an orbit like this, every year it moves away from its orbit in a slight manner, such that if you look into the orbit over a period of long time, it will look something like this in the complete circular manner. This is known as the precession of Mercury. Mercury is slowly precessing away from the proper orbit that it is, and it completes this cycle after a certain period of time. And finally he gave a prediction about the gravitational waves, which we discussed only as recently as 2016. So what I am saying is that it takes time to properly experiment and measure things. It takes time for technology to reach that level that it can test the theories. He gave the theory of gravitational waves in 1916, but the technology required to test it did not arrive until 2016, a century later. So that's how much he was ahead of time. But as I said, he received the Nobel Prize for the photoelectric effect, not for this wonderful theory or its wonderful predictions, because all of these predictions, mostly except the one of gravitational lensing and precession of Mercury, were discovered, were tested after his death. So measurement is one of the important pillars.